Educators agree that the best way to reduce the learning gap between poor and more affluent students is to begin their formal education before children reach kindergarten. But Delaware education reporter Chris Barish is here to tell us how a state decision could jeopardize recent progress. Chris.
Hi, Shirley. Childcare is a business with low profit margins. The state helps with a program that rewards centers who produce higher quality results. But the state has frozen payments to providers, and some say the move undercuts their incentive to improve. At Babes on the Square 2 Child Care Center in Brandywine 160 little stars spend their days in a nurturing, learning environment. The goal is to have children ready to excel in kindergarten.
We are the base. We begin the process of learning, of reading, and without the work that we do, children start school not being prepared.
Educators consider early learning the most critical component to reducing the glaring achievement gap between low-income children and those of means. For example, in third grade English, 37% of Delaware's poor children are proficient, compared with 63% for children who aren't low income. That jarring statistic is burned into the mind of Logan Herring. He runs the Kingswood Community Center. It's next door to Wilmington's Riverside Housing Project, one of the poorest parts of the city and home to many Kingswood students.
If you can't read, that means you're not just struggling in English class, but you can't read your math books, you can't read your science books, you get frustrated. Everything starts in the early learning stages, and we have to be able to address those needs.
To help cut the gap, Delaware pays most or all child care costs for poor parents who are working or going to school. Centers who take low-income children also get additional subsidies under a program called Delaware Stars. Centers earn from 1 to 5 stars for the quality of their staff, curriculum, and family engagement.
This is a center director or an owner saying, I want the best I can possibly give to my staff and the children we serve and the families.
Centers rated 3 through 5 receive so-called tiered reimbursements of up to $75 a week for every low-income child. The higher the ranking, the higher the subsidy. The state spent $20 million last year on STARS reimbursement. Keating Center has a Star 4 rating, and the reimbursement money she receives for her 55 children from poor families helps make ends meet.
I get about $12,000 a month from the tiered reimbursement at a Star 4, and that money's gone. It goes to pay for, the increased education of staff. It goes to pay for what benefits I can offer to staff. It goes to make sure that we have a high quality food program.
Keating is now going for a Star 5 rating. That would bring in another $4,000 a month. But in September, Babes on the Square and the other 500 Star centers received unsettling news. Under Governor John Carney's shared sacrifice budget, they would not receive additional money by raising their Star level. There is not enough funding to expand Stars and tiered reimbursement in the 2018 fiscal year. Kim Krasnowski, who heads the State Office of Early Learning, said the freeze doesn't signal a lack of commitment to star-rated centers.
Although we've had a very tough budget year, we'd still been able to recognize programs and still provide them with their current tiered reimbursement levels.
Michelle Shavitz is executive director of the Delaware Association for the Education of Young Children. She said state officials had assured them funding was going to be sustained, not frozen. Many child care leaders complained loudly at a subsequent public meeting.
From the government perspective, when they shared that information, they said, there's a lot of different organizations that have been cut completely. There's different things that have been cut, but we're not cutting anything. We're sustaining you at this level. But when you're a person losing $50,000 a year, then that word sustain means nothing to you, not for all the work that you've done.
Child care centers are now preparing to lobby state officials and lawmakers to unfreeze the payments. On their side is Krasnowski, a Carney appointee.
Some will have to say, without tiered reimbursement, higher level tiered reimbursement, I just can't offer the same services to these children and families, and then that impacts our community. It impacts children coming into kindergarten, it impacts third grading reading levels.
But even without the financial bonus, directors say they will continue the hard work of teaching the littlest learners, especially the neediest.
They will run our economy someday, they don't have to go to jail. They don't have to have services in high school because they're not prepared. Their health will be better because they've been taught how to take care of themselves. What we do right now changes the entire outlook of our state.
We visited 3 STAR centers while reporting this story, and we watched incredibly dedicated people who don't make a lot of money working so hard and patiently to teach infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. So it's obvious that quality childcare truly makes a difference. But whether or not the state will restore the funding is up in the air.
So then, Chris, how is the early learning community going about trying to get the money back into the budget, or are they just trying to figure out now how they're going to make do without it?
Well, next week the Carney administration will hold budget hearings, and early learning advocates will go down to Legislative Hall and attend the Department of Education session. They'll also lobby lawmakers to try to get the money back in the budget. But there's a lot of special interests competing for precious few dollars, so it might be a tough sell.
Okay, between a rock and a hard place. Thank you so much, Chris. You can find this story and other stories by Chris online at whyy.org/news.